A massive white tiger walked into my hospital carrying a dying cub in its jaws. And what I discovered next exposed one of the most brutal animal trafficking rings in the country. So I was just finishing up a patient's chart when I heard screaming and the sound of tons of feet pounding down the hallway. I peeked out of my office and literally froze in place. Standing in the middle of our hospital lobby was a huge adult tiger. And guys, once the initial shock wore off and I could actually look at this animal, I realized it wasn't just any tiger. It was all white. And in its jaws, this incredible predator was carefully holding a tiny white tiger cub. People were losing it, scattering everywhere, some screaming, others trying to barricade themselves in offices. An elderly woman in the AS straight up fainted at the reception desk. The tiger just stood there, motionless, those amber eyes watching everything. But I didn't see any aggression. None. A few minutes later, police officers burst into the lobby with their guns drawn. And the situation was about to turn tragic. One of the officers was already aiming at the animal, ready to shoot. I jumped forward and started waving my arms, yelling at them not to shoot. See, a few years back I'd worked as a volunteer at a game reserve in Africa. Had tons of experience with lions, leopards, other big predators. The officers hesitated for a second. I quickly explained that if the tiger came here to attack, it would have already done it. But instead, it was just standing there with its cub in its mouth, like it was waiting for something. The senior officer looked at me like I was crazy, but he still told his guys to lower their weapons. Gave me a chance. Though he warned they'd shoot at the first sign of danger. I slowly, very slowly, started walking toward the tiger, trying not to make any sudden moves, keeping my hands where it could see them. My heart was pounding out of my chest, because even with all my experience, you understand that you're looking at an animal that can break your neck with one swipe. When we were about 3 meters apart, the tiger suddenly carefully lowered its head and placed the cub on the floor, then took a few steps back, never taking its eyes off me. There was so much trust and despair in that gesture, it literally took my breath away. I realized it wasn't a tiger, it was a tigress, and she hadn't come to threaten people. She'd come to ask for help for her cub. I crouched down next to the cub and immediately saw that this baby was in critical condition. The cub was barely a week or two old, lethargic, barely moving, its little eyes half closed, breathing ragged and rough. I carefully picked the cub up. It was burning hot from fever, severely dehydrated. The skin on its neck wouldn't bounce back, total lack of fluid in its body. The tigress tensed when I picked up her baby, but she didn't move, only let out this low, guttural rumble that sounded more like a plea than a threat. I quickly called my colleagues. A minute later, 2 more doctors and a nurse rushed out. Though they kept their distance from the tigress, we carried the cub into the treatment room. The tigress slowly followed us, ignoring the police officers who were nervously gripping their guns. When we started examining the cub, the picture was even worse than I thought. Severe dehydration, high fever, signs of infection, probably from dirt and unsanitary conditions. The cub was so skinny that every rib showed under that white fur. The tigress settled by the door and refused to leave. Let out an anxious rumble every time the cub made a weak sound. I knew she was on edge. Her maternal instincts were driving her to stay close to her baby, but she was holding back, not attacking us. Between treatments, I walked up to the tigress, spoke quietly to her in that soothing tone I'd used with wounded lionesses in Africa, and she seemed to understand we were trying to help. We gave the cub N4 to rehydrate, an anti-fever med, broad-spectrum antibiotic. The infection could have been anything. We couldn't wait for test results. While we were fighting for the cub's life, one of the police officers, this experienced detective, started gathering info about where a white tiger could have come from in the city. He interviewed witnesses who'd seen the tigress running through the streets early that morning. checked security footage, retraced her route. Couple hours later, the detective came back with information. The cameras showed the tigress had come from an industrial area on the outskirts. The location of this old warehouse with a high fence and barbed wire. Locals thought it was abandoned. The detective contacted wildlife control. They decided to do a drone reconnaissance before breaking in. If it was an illegal breeding facility, the criminals might try to destroy evidence, meaning they might kill the animals. When the drone flew over the area, the operator saw something absolutely chilling. Rows of metal cages standing in the yard under the scorching sun, containing dozens of wild animals, many of them extremely rare species. It became crystal clear this was a massive operation involved in illegal trade of exotic animals. Immediate action was needed. Special forces organized a lightning raid. I was asked to come along as a wildlife specialist to assess the animal's condition and help with transportation. When we burst into the compound, several guys tried to grab weapons. But the special forces were so quick and professional, they were cuffed within seconds. One of the owners managed to grab a pistol and ran toward the cages, obviously planning to shoot the animals to hide the evidence. But a sniper took him down before he could fire. What I saw in those cages made me clench my fists in pure rage. In cramped, filthy metal boxes, standing in the open sun, these incredible creatures were suffering. A white lion with dull fur lay in the corner of its cage, barely lifting its head. A black panther, ribs sticking out, thrashed nearby, those emerald eyes blazing with hunger and anger. In another cage sat a snow leopard, clutching a tiny cub that was whining pitifully. Nearby, in this super small cage, sat a baby orangutan. Its almost human eyes staring with such sadness I wanted to rip the door off right there. In a separate cage, I found a red panda. These guys usually live in cool mountain forests, but here it was suffocating in the heat, tongue hanging out, panting rapidly. All the animals were emaciated and dehydrated to different degrees. Some had wounds and scrapes from the cramped cages. I quickly figured out which animals needed urgent care. Coordinated with the vets who arrived with transport cages, water, and medicine. While we were dealing with the animals, the police interrogated the guys they'd caught. One of them, a junior accomplice who clearly didn't want the same sentence as the leaders, started spilling everything. Turns out the white tigress had been brought here pregnant just a couple weeks earlier. She'd given birth right there in a filthy, stuffy cage a few days back. The owners immediately realized they had something incredibly rare on their hands. White tigers are already extremely rare, like 1 in 10,000 normal ones, and the cub was also white, making the pair priceless for wealthy collectors. The problem was the tigress herself was starving and hungry. Her milk supply was low. The cub started getting weak almost immediately after birth. These criminals tried to feed the cub some cheap antibiotics bought over the counter, hoping to somehow keep it alive until they found a buyer willing to pay hundreds of thousands for such a rarity. But the sketchy treatment only made things worse. The cub developed an infection, got weaker and weaker, and the tigress, apparently driven by maternal instinct, sensed her baby was dying. The accomplice said that the night before, they discovered the tigress had somehow broken the lock on the cage, grabbed the cub, escaped through a hole in the fence they'd made for garbage. She traveled several kilometers through the city, instinctively moving toward crowds of people. Desperation overcame her natural fear of humans. Reaching the hospital was pure luck. But that luck saved her cub's life. The rescue operation at the facility took several hours. Each animal had to be examined, stabilized, put in a transport cage. The white lion literally had to be carried out on a stretcher. That's how weak he was. The black panther hissed and snapped until a vet sedated him. The snow leopard wouldn't let anyone near her cub until I showed her I had food and water. The baby orangutan grabbed me with its tiny hands and wouldn't let go, like it was terrified of being put back in a cage. All the animals were sent to specialized rehab centers and sanctuaries around the world. The white lion went to a big reserve in South Africa, where several of its species already lived. The black panther went to a rehab center for big cats. Long recovery ahead. The snow leopard and its cub were transferred to a high-altitude reserve. Given conditions as close to natural as possible, the baby orangutan flew to a primate rehab center. They'll teach it the skills it needs for life in the wild. The red panda went to a zoo with a conservation program for rare species. As for the criminals, they got arrested and charged with illegal wildlife trafficking, cruelty to animals, and endangering public safety. Turns out this group worked for an international smuggling network that supplied rare animals to wealthy clients around the world. Arab sheiks, Asian businessmen. The breeding center had only been running for a few months, but during that time, dozens of animals had passed through, most already sold and shipped abroad. The white tigress and cub were sent to one of the best big cat sanctuaries. They got a huge enclosure with natural landscape, a pond, tons of hiding places. The cub was still weak for the first few days, but under the care of experienced vets and thanks to the mother, who was now getting proper food, he started recovering fast. Within a week, his temperature was back to normal. Infection gone. Cub started gaining weight. 3 months passed before I could get away and visit the tigress and cub at the sanctuary. When I got there, the staff led me to their enclosure, and what I saw filled my heart with incredible joy. The tigress lay in the shade of this big tree. Next to her, a way bigger and stronger cub was playing around, that white fur glistening in the sun, eyes sparkling with curiosity and energy. As I walked up, the tigress raised her head and looked at me, and I could have sworn I saw a flicker of recognition in those amber eyes. The cub jumped around its mom, trying to catch her tail. She patiently let it play, occasionally gently nudging it with her nose when it got too wild. The reserve staff told me the tigress was a surprisingly calm and caring mother, teaching her cub everything it needed to know. It had every chance of growing up healthy and strong. In a few years, when the cub becomes an adult, they're planning to include it in the white tiger breeding program to preserve this extremely rare genetic variant. Standing by the fence watching this peaceful scene, I thought about how the tigress had traveled several kilometers through an unfamiliar city full of dangers, risking her own life, just to find help for her dying cub. A mother's love proved stronger than her instinct for self-preservation, stronger than her fear of humans, stronger than all the obstacles in her way. Thanks to this boundless maternal love, the white tiger cub got a second chance. He'll grow up safe, next to the mother who risked everything for his survival. If this story blew your mind, please smash that like button and subscribe. I've got way more incredible rescue stories coming your way. Thanks for watching, guys.